inspires people to go places. Globally valued at $129 billion, the activities market is now growing at a pace that's faster than that of the entire travel market. Asia Pacific actually comprises the largest share of that, now comprising 30%. Here with us today are some of the region's leading players who are making one of travel's longest long tails more accessible. Please welcome our panelists, Anand Kandare, Executive Vice President and Head of Local of ClearTrip, Renee Welsh, CEO of Booking Boss, and Clement Wong, Founder and CEO of Be My Guest. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Let's dive right in. So the majority of the tours and attractions bookings, they're still largely made offline. In our research, we saw about 80% is offline. And Asia Pacific, we actually see lower online penetration than in many of the other regions across the world. So I'd just love to get each of your thoughts on, what's your assessment of this? What are some of the challenges that you see Asia Pacific facing, or even specific markets within the region? So let's start with you.
I think for us, what we are coming from is a B2B angle, and what we've been addressing to begin with has been supply. So how do we get supply online? As you've rightly said, most of the bookings are still very offline. So our approach has been to provide all these operators of activities, tours, and attractions with technology. So our model is very similar to that of Booking.com and Agoda, which is like going through providing them with Booking Suite. So trying to secure supply by giving out free technology, good technology to help them manage inventory, pricing, yield management, and distribution. And once we have secured that, we are able to build a pipeline to connect them to the audiences, the OTAs of the world, the hotels, and the airlines. So what we have seen that is quite encouraging in the Asia Pacific region is the really high mobile-first penetration of users, right? And with that, we are able to really just plug our API into all these different audiences. And what we are seeing is really tours and activities increasingly being booked online, and especially pre-arrival.
Okay, great. And then Renee?
So we provide the activity and attraction operators with reservation management software to essentially manage their business, and in a similar way to Be My Guest, connect out to the broader tourism industry. I think that, based on the research, yes, online penetration is growing, and I think that's the critical piece, is not that it's less than other parts of the world. I think the opportunity in the APAC region is significant, and it's growing faster. It's the largest segment, as you said earlier, and the opportunity here is so much greater to engage that and grow that online penetration than it is anywhere else in the world. Right. And the adoption of technology to be able to manage their businesses is definitely growing, as we've seen, but there is still a big education piece involved in that, and I think that's part of what we're all contributing to as well.
Yep, great. Anand.
Yeah.
How far away, Anand?
I think the problem that we're trying to solve in this space is far more complex, both in terms of the fragmentation, degree of fragmentation that is there, and also in terms of the diversity of content, right? To try and solve that and integrate that in a seamless, experiential way for a consumer to buy and experience it, integrate it with his entire travel journey, is, I think, a far more complex problem that we're trying to solve. If you look at how it's sort of evolving in the Indian context, I think we're in a very, very nascent stages of what we're doing. But there's a lot of action that's happening in the space, and it's just a matter of time when we'll start seeing a lot more interest. And bringing about consumer behavioral change, we have seen that over the years, until last year, the hotel penetration in the segment has been at about 10%. And yeah, it's just a matter of time when we'll get there.
Great. And so much of travel is about that events booking, right? So for hotels and air, being able to book that online in advance. But what about activities? How big is the opportunity for advanced booking versus what's happening in destination?
So what we have been doing is, so we launched our revenue management technology, and so now our operators are able to do yield management, right? So like what the airlines and hotels are doing. Prior to that, if you were to book a zoo ticket on the day itself or a month before, it's the same price. So the traveler wouldn't make an effort to book earlier, but we don't actually buy flight tickets on the day itself at the airport counter. Why are we doing the same thing for zoo tickets and stuff like that? So, since we've launched our revenue management technology, what we have seen is a drastic shift towards pre-booking. So, if you tell like Mr. Smith, right, hey, you, your wife, and 2 kids, if you book a month before, you get 20% off. Mr. Smith will book in advance. And so, what we have seen as well is there are a few factors. In based on our data, for the Western tourists, they are more like arriving in destination and then deciding what they want to do. But from what we see from the Chinese, from the Vietnamese, and the Koreans, it is more pre-booking before they get there. Some reasons are that mainly for us in Asia, we do not have that many days of annual leave. So they do not want to get there and then, debate with the missus what they want to do. Secondly, is as well the language issues, right? So it's not so much like a hotel where you just show up and they just check into the room, but if there are language issues with regards to your activity booking or your cooking class or whatever, right? So they want to preempt that. And so that's where we come in. So through our localization into Mandarin and all the Asian languages, we are able to provide all these travel planners the ability to pre-plan their trip, and that gets them booking ahead of time.
You mentioned yield management. Are you seeing that your partners and suppliers are actually doing any kind of yield management? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an educational process.
Yeah.
But with the more sophisticated partners are starting to do that. The lesser ones, we actually have account managers to help them do the yield management.
Okay. How about you guys? Are you guys seeing your suppliers adopting any yield management strategies?
We do a lot of supplier-funded stuff in terms of the fact that, yes, there are weekday pricing and weekend pricing. We are seeing adoption there. In terms of consumption patterns, we're seeing that 0 and 1 is about 70% of our bookings are same day or
70%.
one day. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
about 70%. And if I were to take that bracket up to about 7 days, it would come to about high 90s. And so pre-planned kind of bookings, also the fact that we are from a local standpoint, right? We're looking at it as of now from a local standpoint than a traveler standpoint. We are seeing some very, very interesting insights to the extent that 80% of our consumers are first-time consumers into ClearTrip. So it's also acting like a very, very interesting acquisition channel. The frequency is far, far higher when compared to travel. We are seeing active transactions on almost 45% of the base. Repeat is under 30 days. So I think, yeah.
Okay.
We're seeing similar stats. So most of our customers are essentially booking within, well, our customers rather, are booking within that 2-day period, and it drops off significantly 7 days. But I think one thing we can't discount with our category is that it can be largely weather dependent. So a lot of consumers don't necessarily want to book their attraction ticket prior to arrival unless it's valid for a certain period of time, in which case they can choose the best day that they attend the zoo. And I think that definitely plays a role in consumer behaviour and how we move pre-booking online and what level of flexibility we give the customers when they do that.
Yeah. Now, just thinking about, there's consumers who want to wait, right? And then there's suppliers that sometimes aren't able to allow instant confirmation. Is that something that you guys are seeing being a barrier to meeting what the consumers are looking for, and that they want to book last minute? Are the suppliers able to give that instant booking confirmation on the spot, that 70% that you mentioned?
Initially, we thought that it would be a very, very complex problem to solve, and in terms of last-minute inventory. What has been surprising to us that our fulfillment, in terms of fulfillment, it's substantially good. We have a failure ratio of about 0.14%, which has been really surprising to us. Engagement on the platform is substantially high. But yes, there is hand-holding that we do in terms of the fact that you've onboarded a seller. The first 10, 15 bookings is something we hand-hold. We make sure that there's going to be a callback and really handhold the guy through the process initially. But once that part is done and he starts to see a consistent flow of business coming in from you, I think they adopt quite well.
Okay. Now, Clement, you guys create technology for your suppliers. Renee, you create technology, right, to give to suppliers or to help them. So how, for ClearTrip, how are you connecting to the supplier's inventory?
Yeah, we have cleared up our entire backend platform. It's called CAM, ClearTrip Activities Management Platform. So it's a content management, inventory management, pricing management, promotional management. It's got the works. So,
Okay, so
yeah,
you guys are providing that service.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, great. Thinking about some new entrants into this space, Airbnb, they announced at the end of last year, right, that they are making some tourism activities bookable on their platform, and just wanted to get an assessment of your thoughts on that.
I think it's exciting. I think that I've been working in this sector for a long time, and the interest with major brands in the experience segment is only going to improve the segment overall, speed up education for supply, and provide a better consumer experience. So overall, I think it's fantastic. I think that it will be interesting to see how Airbnb play out the peer-to-peer model, so a host potentially taking someone out on a tour, and the quality and how they maintain that consistency of service, I think, will be critical for an experience rather than a room or a house. Right. It's a very, very different type of product. So overall, I think it's fantastic for the industry as a whole, but obviously they're taking a very different view of how they provide this type of product to their consumer. So watch the space, I guess.
I think what we have done with the approach of supply, it's helping our partners vet the suppliers, right? You wouldn't go diving with someone who is not a licensed instructor. So from Airbnb's approach, I think some of these experiences will work very well, especially in an urban environment. But if you are going beyond that, so going jungle trekking or diving in the sea, you might want to think whether you want to go with this person into the jungle, and you might disappear and not come out again. So
I'm very careful who I go in the jungle with. So
yeah. So I think this whole Airbnb launching experiences has really raised the bar and really increased the spotlight into the whole category, and that's a very good thing for all of us here.
Great. And then just going back to the peer-to-peer point that you guys have mentioned, we really haven't seen it take off that much. Do you think that it will? Do you think this is a trend to keep an eye on? And are you seeing demand for these more unique local experiences on your end?
I think there's a lot of work yet to be done. That's my personal view. I think in terms of integrating the product and content at the appropriate time in the journey of the consumer, there's going to be a lot more product evolution that's going to happen, but it's going to happen rather fast. And in terms of interest in the space overall, I just think that over the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a far more interest in the space because it's an integral part, like you said earlier, right? It's an integral part on the purpose of travel. Everything else is the means. The hotel, the flights is just the means. And you're going to see a lot more larger players in the space from the fact that it is something that you can build loyalty with. Yeah? Otherwise, everything else is going to be transactional. Here's a space there which is experiential in nature. If you can actually deliver that experience, it's got the propensity to build repeat and loyalty. So yeah, that's going to be interesting.
I don't think that customer expectations change, whether it be a peer-to-peer type of activity or a professional service provider. What I think is important to the consumer is authenticity in the experience and actually creating memories for them. And that moves beyond being a transactional facilitation between a brand and a customer. And I think that's what it basically comes down to, is the authenticity and the value that customer sees within that experience that makes a difference.
I I think for us, in terms of peer-to-peer, I mean, we've been doing this now for 5 years. In the early days, we were very much driven to push peer-to-peer, but we've found out very quickly that a lot of Asian travelers, we are traveling for the very first time, and we have limited number of annual leave. Again, I get to the right point. So when we get to Beijing, we want to see the Great Wall of China, the Temple of Peace, and the Forbidden City, and not do a calligraphy class or something hyper local. So I get our view is that the majority of Asian travelers will still focus on the main experiences, the top experiences like floating market and at very best the Thai cooking class. But beyond that, I think that would take a couple of years more.
Okay. And then just some general, trends across products. What are you seeing anything new? What are travelers looking for these days? How else has that been evolving in the region?
We see very, very distinct characteristics between age groups and between in-destination and local. Okay, very, very distinct characteristics. In terms of local, we see, because if you look at what we have done is we've actually gone ahead segregated the content as activities, which is outdoor, day outings, adventure and stuff like that. We have events as a category, and we have eat outs as a category. Amongst this, in the local context, our activities portfolio contributes to about 60% of our transactions. The events is seasonal. You get a high demand content. You get someone like UB40 playing for you, and the content is exclusive with you. You just see this huge offtake that happens. And the eat out in the eat out segment, because they're dining experiences, that's just contributing about 10 to 15%.
Now, a lot of the purpose of online distribution, right, is to make it easier to search, shop, buy for the traveler, so that I don't need to go to 20 different websites to compare my options. So my question related to this is, for this sector, right, it's not really a sector. It's more of an umbrella that covers like 25 different sectors. Yeah. So how do you merchandise that? How do you present the options and the right options to the traveler when it's not just a seat in a plane. It's not just a hotel bed. You have the diving tour next to the jungle tour, next to the Segway tour, next to the big bus tour. So how do you deal with merchandising within this industry to present the options?
On the B2C side, right, on the consumer-facing side, we've done some very interesting work in that space, and still it's learning, right? It's not that we have cracked the whole piece. We've got a city view where we are able to merchandise different aspects. We are sort of keeping track of past behavior of that consumer, what his offtake had been, what his inspiration could possibly be, next time around. We're looking at data points like weekday and weekend content that we merchandise is different, and there is constant personalization models that we are actually working towards. It's again early stages, like I said.
Yeah, I think it is difficult because, as you said, there's such a broad range of experiences and everyone is different. But ultimately, as personalisation improves and deeper customer profiling emerges, I think that the merchandising and the products is going to become a lot easier. We obviously don't have a B2C site. We power our customers' websites. Right. And so for us, it's more about not necessarily the breadth of the product, but how we upsell and look at ancillary options to increase the basket size for them through that process when they're getting direct bookings. And then obviously distributing the right content to our channel partners is critical as well in that last minute inventory and pricing.
And for us, during the whole onboarding process of our operators and suppliers, we actually do curation of it. So we actually, every single listing in our database has a meta tag on it. So whether it's more suitable for couples or families or more cultural activity or more romantic and so on and so forth. And all this meta tag information for each and every listing is passed through our API. So for example, a partner like an OTA, right? So they will have, let's say if they know someone that's booked, they have the information of the passenger or the traveler. So if it's a couple with 2 kids, we're not going to recommend them, they will not recommend skydiving or whitewater rafting. It will be more Disneyland, Kidzania, and so on. So all this information we actually pass on to our partner in terms to help them do their the selling to the end traveler. So it's not just a simple matter of, hey, here's my API, good luck, cheerio. But we actually do a lot of account management because a lot of partners are going into the tours and activities segment for the first time. And a lot of them make the mistake of selling it the same way as you will sell flights or hotels, which isn't really the case, right? So we are there to actually help them optimize the integration, the conversion, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting because you guys provide the technology to your suppliers, and then obviously you're a technology provider. But I think a lot of the market is still not using reservation technology, right? I was down in southern India 2 weeks ago in Kerala, and I was trying to book an overnight houseboat tour. And I go to the government office that oversees all the houseboat operators, and I'm just watching them. They have a notebook, and the houseboat owners would come in and sign their names, write down their phone numbers. You can see the photo here. I just had to capture it for this session. And so the guy at the desk would literally go down and call people one by one and then mark off the person if they were not available. And clearly this was not a real-time reservation system because none of them were available. So just how do you start to show these smaller operators the importance of some kind of technology for reservation systems coming online, just shifting that mentality?
And for us, what we've done is we have a certification program. So we have a community of 500 bloggers that we actually send out to try and test the experiences. Secondly, we also have a service level agreement. So you have to honor the bookings. Let's say if it's booked 48 hours or 72 hours before, failing which you will lose your space in our database in an API. So if you do not match up to the service levels that we have agreed on when we contracted you, there's a high chance that we'll remove you. Yeah. So that really keeps them on the toe in terms of like making sure that yes, there's availability allocation for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they're not yet evolved this entire segment, right? They're not yet evolved to handling multiple channels. They obviously have the traditional offline business, which they've been used to, and if you have more than 1, 2, or 3 platforms, which was the case in hotels, if you're going to have that kind of extranet platforms that they have to deal with multiple platforms, it is going to be challenging for them as well.
Right.
Well, is there an opportunity for something like a channel manager, single dashboard? I don't know. What we've done is that we have gone ahead and equipped him with the basics. We did think about saying that do we build deeper systems for the seller to manage not only our bookings but his entire business. But we have put that as a secondary for us. We have said that the primary thing is that if you can get consumers to adopt and actually deliver business, he will adopt to any technology that you want.
So our biggest competitor is pen and paper and spreadsheets. Despite global adoption of reservation systems increasing, it is still definitely our biggest competitor. The reality is that I guess the OTAs coming into a region actually support them utilising a service like ours, because when they get that operational pressure from having multiple channels that they distribute through and not being able to manage their business, or seeing their competitors grow at a faster rate because they've adopted technology earlier, it makes that sale a lot easier for us. But there's absolutely still a vast group of suppliers that don't understand the opportunity available by utilising technology like Booking Boss.
Right.
And that's part of what we're educating them on. And that's an ongoing challenge.
Okay. Our research, we saw that within Asia Pacific, Australia does have a higher adoption of reservation technology, probably thanks to the likes of Booking Boss. So I'm just curious, thoughts on what kind of challenges within the rest of the region? Why is it they're a little bit more adverse to adopting some of these technologies?
I think it's just a matter of time. And one thing that we see a lot in Asia, I mean, in the beginning, we wanted to charge them to use our technology, but we Asians are quite cheapskate. If you ask Anand as well, we want free technology. So So that's where our approach has been, right? Just giving them the best technology, getting feedback from them, building what they want, and so on. And with that, we've been able to scale very quickly to more than 4,000 operators using our platform across Asia.
Oh.
So what we are doing is educating the market, trying to set the benchmark for service levels and so on, so that it becomes consistent. So I would say for the tours and activities sector, we are possibly a year or two behind that of Europe and the US and Australia as well.
Okay.
I think one of the things Clement just said then that's critical is listening to the suppliers, getting their feedback, and by doing so, creating trust and a deeper relationship with that supplier, and that then creates word of mouth, and they do talk to each other. It is a small industry, be that regionally or within a particular segment. So building that trust and actually delivering the technology that enhances and improves their business and automates some of those processes, I think is critical.
Okay.
I just sort of recall an example of what we encountered in Goa. Okay, we were contracting bike rentals because everybody who goes down to Goa goes ahead and gets a bike and just sort of moves on the bike. If you ask him what's the rate, what is the pricing that you want, right? What is the pricing that you want to upload on the system? He says, this Monday it could be 400, next Monday it could be 800, I don't know. So it's very, very tricky to go ahead and, because he's like very small operator, he's got maybe 4 or 5 bike rentals. To get him to adopt into a pricing strategy and say, you may look at weekday, weekend, he says, no, I look at based on number of people I'm going to have at my door. Yeah, that's how I define my price. So yeah, it's not going to be easy to get adoption at much smaller scale operators.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's been a lot of startups within this space. We've tracked over 200 companies or so within the past 10 years. And I'm just curious your thoughts on why there hasn't been a really big breakout success yet, right? You know, in accommodations, we have Airbnb and we have Uber and ground transportation. So, you know, Viator, it took them like 20 years to get acquired. So what are your thoughts on what's happening in this space?
Well, I think that, the tours and activities space really started to get heated up after the acquisition of Viator by TripAdvisor. So if you use that as a starting point, then we are still in a very early days. Whereas if you look at the likes of Airbnb, they're almost like a decade-old company already. So for us, I think we will get there. It's just like we are in the very early stages of where Airbnb were when they were doing the really Airbnb mattress thing, right? So there is interest in this space, and really this space is pretty much a final frontier in terms of travel distribution, flights, hotels, car rental, local accommodation, taxis, buses, trains, all pretty much digitized. So this will be the space, and it's just a matter of like, okay, now that the budget hotels portion is being digitized, so we are pretty much getting to be the main focus now.
Viator were the pioneers in our industry, and so I think it's remiss of us to say it took them 20 years to get to where they are, because technology 20 years ago is not where it is today. And technology that we're providing suppliers could not be provided at the cost per month that it is provided now. So as things have become more sophisticated, cloud has arrived, technology prices have decreased, I think that's where we're seeing this massive shift in the scalability of this industry. And I agree with Clement in that it's really heated up since Viator was acquired, but I also think that Viator laid a lot of the groundwork for the industry to be where it is today. And so we are very young. I mean, one of the things I've been told so many times is every overnight success takes 10 to 12 years. Yeah. And the same is true of Airbnb. You know, you think of Airbnb now, it's huge, but that was a 10-year journey or more. And we're still in our infancy. And I think that's what's incredibly exciting for me personally. Great.
Yeah, just add to the same thing. 15 years ago, you were speaking flight penetration flights. I think you've come to a time now we're speaking hotels and online hotels and what's the penetration hotels.
Yeah.
It's not going to take us 10 years, maybe 3 to 5, and it'll be a very, very sought after segment in the travel business. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's happening now, right? In just the past few years, it seems like a lot of the big brands have been wanting to get into this space. Expedia with their local expert, Airbnb, TripAdvisor now, making inventory online bookable. C-Trip just added local activities just in the past few years as well. So curious, why do you think the sector is getting all the attention now?
It's all about looking for the margins, right? And similarly, travel is all about the things to do in the destination and not really just about the hotel room or the economy flight out there, right? I think also there is a shift towards the type of travelers. During my parents' generation, it was like 14-day tour of Europe, 10 countries, get on a bus, take a photo of the Eiffel Tower, hop on a bus, move on and so on. So it was more like in terms of like collecting destinations, whereas what we see with the millennials and so on is more like collecting experiences and showing them off on Snapchat or on Facebook and so on. So that's where we are seeing the potential of the space to go towards.
Yeah. Just one final question from each of you guys. One prediction for what's going to happen in this space, either in 2017 or beyond. Anand, why don't you start?
Next time around, I would believe that this would be the head topic at Phocuswright conference. And you're going to have day one, a large more audience here. And we're going to be talking about what is Be My Guest, maybe the unicorn in Asia. Yeah? I think that's my prediction.
I share that sentiment. I think it's really difficult I wish I had a crystal ball, but at the end of the day, it's an extremely fast-growing segment. It's extremely exciting times, and I think that, I agree, we need to be on the first day and have a bigger share of voice because...
Noted.
Yeah.
For us, I know that 2017 will be the tipping point. I wish I can share with you everything, but the number of partners, the big boys going live for tours and activities is just scary. It's just like, wow, it's not whether you want or don't want to play in this space, but if you don't play in this space, you'll be left behind, if you're an OTA especially. So.
Well, I'm excited to hear what's in store for us. Clement, Renee, Anand, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Could dress up to get